dive into the 17th and 18th centuries, an era marked by grandeur and opulence, the era of Louis XIV. Imagine France, a country in the throes of a social and political transformation. It's a time when the monarchy's dominance is unquestioned, and the king's word is the law of the land. This is the backdrop against which Louis XIV, the Sun King, steps onto the centre stage of history. Louis XIV was born in the year 1638, a time of great turmoil in France. The country was grappling with the aftermath of the bloody 30 Years' War, and the monarchy was in a precarious situation, struggling to consolidate its power. Amidst this chaos, the birth of Louis XIV, the future Sun King, offered a glimmer of hope. Just 5 years later, in 1643, Louis ascended to the throne. He was a child, a mere boy of 5 years, but he carried the weight of an entire kingdom on his small shoulders. His ascension marked a turning point in the history of France. It was the beginning of a new era, an era characterized by the centralization of power and the strengthening of the monarchy. The era of Louis XIV was not just about political power and dominance. It was also a time of cultural richness and intellectual flourishing. The arts thrived under Louis's patronage, and France became a leading light in the world of literature, music, and fashion. This was the era that gave us the splendor of Versailles, the beauty of Molière's plays, and the elegance of French fashion. But the Sun King's reign was not without its challenges. From economic crises to religious tensions, Louis XIV had to navigate a complex landscape to maintain his grip on power. Thus begins the reign of the Sun King, a reign that would last for over 7 decades. Stay tuned as we delve deeper into the life and legacy of Louis XVI, exploring the ups and downs of his rule, his impact on France, and his place in the annals of history. Now, picture a young Louis XIV, barely 5 years old, ascending to the throne. This was a pivotal moment in French history. The year was 1643, and the nation was knee-deep in the throes of the 30 Years' War. But at the heart of the turmoil was a child, Louis XIV, who was too young to grasp the gravity of the crown he had just inherited. His mother, Anne of Austria, served as regent, guiding the young king through the turbulent waters of early rule. Cardinal Mazarin, a cunning diplomat and politician, was her right-hand man. Mazarin had a profound influence on Louis, shaping the young king's understanding of his royal duties and the art of governance. As Louis grew older, he watched Mazarin deftly navigate the intricacies of court politics and international diplomacy. These lessons weren't lost on him. They would serve as the foundation of his own rule in the years to come. However, the road to absolute power was not without its bumps. The civil wars known as the Fronde erupted across France during Louis's early reign. These rebellions, orchestrated by French nobles and members of the Parliament, aimed to resist the centralizing efforts of the crown. But Louis and Mazarin managed to quell these rebellions, further strengthening the power and authority of the monarchy. When Cardinal Mazarin died in 1661, Louis made a decision that shocked the court. He announced he would rule without a chief minister. This was unprecedented. But Louis was determined to hold the reins of power firmly in his own hands. He successfully consolidated absolute power, centralizing all decision-making processes. His word became law, his decisions undisputed. Louis XIV's reign was characterized by this unyielding consolidation of power. His conviction in his divine right to rule laid the groundwork for his nickname, the Sun King. He became the epitome of an absolute monarch, his rule serving as a model for other European monarchs. With the death of Cardinal Mazarin, Louis XV became the absolute monarch, ruling with an iron fist. This was the dawn of a new era in French history, an era marked by the ascension and consolidation of power by a king who would cast a long and influential shadow over his kingdom. The Sun King's reign was characterized by an unrelenting pursuit of power and grandeur. Louis XV, a king who held an iron grip on the throne for an impressive 72 years, wasn't just content with ruling. He wanted to dazzle. One of the most iconic symbols of his reign was the opulent Palace of Versailles. Transforming his father's old hunting lodge into a dazzling chateau, Louis XIV created a place where power and beauty coexisted. This grand estate served not only as a royal residence, but also as a hub of political power where the king could keep a close eye on his nobles and control the machinery of government. But the Sun King's reign was not all about splendour and spectacle. It was also marked by religious strife. In 1685, Louis XVIII revoked the Edict of Nantes, which had granted religious freedoms to the Protestant Huguenots. This decision led to widespread persecution of the Huguenots and a mass exodus of Protestants from France, a move that would have long-lasting effects on the nation's economy and society. Wars were another constant during Louis XVII's rule. From the War of Devolution to the War of the Spanish Succession, Louis XVI's reign was punctuated by almost incessant conflict. The Sun King was determined to expand his territories and influence, and he wasn't afraid to use military might to achieve his goals. Yet amidst this turmoil, the arts flourished. Louis XIV was a lavish patron of culture, fostering the growth of French classicism in literature, music, and the visual arts. He brought together the greatest artists of the time, commissioning works that glorified his reign and embodied the ideals of his absolute monarchy. Despite the wars and religious strife, Louis XIV's reign was a golden age for French culture and arts. So while the Sun King's reign was marked by grandeur and conflict, it was also a time of extraordinary cultural richness and vitality, a testament to the complex and contradictory nature of this unforgettable monarch. Even the brightest sun has to set, and so it was with Louis XIV. As the Sun King journeyed into the twilight of his years, his reign was not without its challenges. Economic difficulties were on the rise, and the public was growing increasingly discontent. The once prosperous kingdom began to wane under the weight of Louis's extravagant spending and the cost of continuous warfare. The king's dream of expanding his empire was met with resistance. His ambitions, once admired, now led to the loss of valuable territories. The War of the Spanish Succession, which began in the early 1700s, saw the Sun King's armies defeated and his grand plans of territorial expansion thwarted. But it was not just the losses on the battlefield that marked these twilight years. The king's health was also deteriorating. The once vigorous and energetic monarch was now frail and often confined to his bed. Yet, even in his weakened state, Louis XIV remained a commanding presence. His determination and strong will remained unbroken, a testament to the indomitable spirit of the man who had reigned for so long. In September of 1715, after 72 years on the throne, the Sun King drew his last breath. His death marked the end of the longest reign of any monarch of a sovereign country in European history. The man who had been a king since he was only 4 years old had finally bid adieu to his kingdom. Louis XIV's death was met with a mixture of relief and mourning. The people, who had lived under his absolute rule for so long, were now facing an uncertain future. But for all the challenges and difficulties of his reign, Louis XIV had been their king, a constant, unchanging figure in a world of uncertainty. With the death of Louis XIV, an era of grandeur and absolute monarchy came to an end. The Sun King's legacy continues to shine brightly, even centuries after his death. As we delve into the aftermath of Louis XIV's reign, it becomes evident that his influence extends far beyond his lifetime, shaping the very fabric of modern France and forming a significant part of its national identity. Louis XIV's reign was marked by a significant centralization of power. The king's belief in the divine right of kings led him to consolidate power and authority into his own hands, reducing the influence of the nobility. This shift laid the groundwork for the modern French state, where the power is centralized in the government. Notably, Louis XIV's reign also saw the flourishing of arts and culture. The king was a great patron of the arts, and it was under his rule that French culture began to assert itself prominently on the European stage. He fostered the development of French music, dance, and visual arts, leading to a cultural blossoming that continues to be celebrated today. The French language itself was solidified and promoted, becoming the language of diplomacy and high culture throughout Europe. The Sun King's influence also extended to the concept of absolute monarchy. His reign served as a blueprint for other European monarchs who sought to centralize power. His court's elaborate etiquette fashion and architectural grandeur became the standard for royal courts across Europe. And who can forget the magnificent Palace of Versailles? This architectural marvel, built by Louis XIV, stands as a testament to his love for grandeur and opulence. It continues to draw millions of visitors each year, a physical embodiment of the Sun King's enduring legacy. But his legacy is not just about buildings and power structures. It's about a sense of identity, a sense of pride, and a sense of belonging. Louis XIV's reign shaped French national identity, establishing France as a major power and cultural hub in Europe. Louis XV, the Sun King, continues to cast a long shadow over France, his legacy as vibrant and enduring as the magnificent Palace of Versailles he built.